JJ McCarthy is in camp, ready to go, but how much is it going to matter that he missed his rookie year? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. I appreciate you all so very much. My hashtag everydayers. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And especially thank you to those of you who enjoyed last week, the history series that I made for you while I was out of town. I'm back. We're in it. We are gonna catch up. We've got a lot of catching up to do because I was away from here for a couple of weeks. So we are back full swing. 3 football parties a week, 5 episodes of Locked On Vikings a week. Patreon's kicking up again soon. I actually have some cool stuff to tell you about maybe later in the week there. But for now, let's focus on the news of the day, which comes from ESPN. Kevin Seifert writes a fantastic article about JJ McCarthy and the year he spent. So here's the deal. We live in this world where we have to be nuanced about what our expectations for JJ McCarthy are vis-a-vis being a functional rookie, being sort of a like de facto rookie, right? I've said this before, but I think it's too charitable to say that JJ McCarthy should be treated like a rookie, should be given the same sort of leeway that you gave to Drake May and Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix last year. That said, it's also probably unfair to give him as little leash as you're going to give to all those guys this year, right? Those guys are second-year QBs. They had a year. Now the expectation is to improve. Bo Nix, you got to get deeper in the playoffs. Jaden Daniels, you got to keep this up. Now there's like this sort of established baseline. We don't have that for McCarthy either. And he still is going to have what you would call rookie moments. He's going to throw a pick that looks bad. He's going to have a moment where he doesn't, process things quickly enough, where he doesn't get to the line quickly enough. We're going to have operational struggles. That stuff is still going to happen. So the question becomes, you miss a rookie year, what does that do to our expectations? And what Kevin Seifert has given us really is going to help us to craft that idea. Because now we have at least a sense for some of the stuff that McCarthy spent his time on last year. What we knew before this was, he was rehabbing an injury and he was, in meetings. He was doing stuff sometimes. But there's actually some interesting specifics from this article. So I'm going to go over that with you. But we have so much other catching up to do. There's injury stuff around the NFC North that's kind of important to talk about, even though, this isn't Locked On Lions or Locked On Packers, but we should mention it. There's also some stuff going on at the NFLPA. I talked about that a couple weeks ago with Arif Hassan. We've got an update on that story, and I do think that it's important, even though it's not team specific. It's pretty seismic stuff. So I think we should mention that. Not to mention, we got a little bit closer to resolution in Jordan Addison's situation. All that's coming up. But with McCarthy, to dive into this article from Kevin Seifert, a lot of it goes over the nature of these hour-long weekly meetings that Kevin O'Connell would have with JJ McCarthy. He'd set aside an hour on a Thursday and say, hey, we're not talking about anything, game plan, blah, 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 let's just touch base, let's talk. And sometimes he would quiz him. He would, say, what do you think about the game plan? They would talk about that. But sometimes it'd be like, hey, dude, how you doing? And it sort of, it plays into this vibe that I've been getting that isn't like a direct report from anybody, but it kind of feels like it, that JJ McCarthy really struggled. A life coach from Michigan, like a guy that he, like a mentor figure that he really looked up to, passed away in September. That can't have helped. But there's also just the that thing, we get to it a lot in Everyman series when guys are injured and they got to sit out a year for the first time ever, whether it happens in college or high school or whatever, that it like weighs on you. It's really hard to be patient with these guys that, JJ McCarthy has spent his entire life ahead of the curve. In 6th grade, he was thinking about what high school he was going to go to. In 10th grade, he was thinking about what college he was going to go to. And before he even really took a snap in college, he was already thinking about his NFL draft strategy. I wrote an article that I am very, very proud of at Wide Left. I will link it in the show notes. If you're a subscriber to Wide Left, you can read that. Yell at me if I forget. That goes over his whole story and his journey to get to the NFL. But what it gives me a good sense of his mind to think about the way that he came up and how he was very often ordained. And I mean, like, truly, he was anointed. Like, he was the guy's he went to Nazareth High School. Okay, I'm not out of place using these biblical terms. But he was like chosen, it's just like, you are the quarterback now. You are. It wasn't like he didn't have to like struggle past someone. He didn't have to, grind and spit and blood and earn it. He had it. He always had it. And with it came the pressure and this kind of constant desire to get better. And, there's a privilege that comes with that. I talked about that in the article. But like, mentally, when you can't be that guy, when you were supposed to, when you can't, you're not allowed to. I mean, your knee is hurt, so you can't walk. You got a scooter you're driving around on. But also, even after that, you're doing your rehab, but you can only do so much a day. And if you try to push it too much, you could re-aggravate it. It's like not good to overwork it. You shouldn't. You need to be like really judicious about the amount of time you spend. That's such a different mindset. These athletes all want to do a little more. They all want to stay after practice, throw it around a little more, get in an extra workout, put in one extra set on the bench, whatever they want. Like, they always want to do a little more. And when you're specifically like forbidden from doing a little more, it really screws with you. You have to learn a different kind of patience. For a young guy, he's 21, that was really hard. It just sounds like that really messed with his head. So sometimes these meetings were, hey man, are you okay? Like, are you doing all right? But regardless, it was about the mental, right? And that's kind of what we expected. But we got some cool specifics like Josh McCown. Every once in a while in the QB meeting, it was all about Sam Darnold, and it was all about, that's what these QB meetings are. You got the starter, and everybody else in the room is kind of their assistant and saying, okay, here's what I thought. What do you think, Sam? Here's what I thought. What do you think, Sam? And then Josh McCown says, what do you think, Sam? And every once in a while, he would throw one to JJ. Just make sure make sure he's still engaged. And he always was. On top of it, understanding. One interesting little technological thing. So there's this sort of every once in a while trend of virtual reality to help quarterbacks. Teddy Bridgewater kind of had this famous moment with using VR and playing Madden in VR to like try to get a better sense for the mental processing. And Jaden Daniels very famously used it to help him transition from college to the pros. The Vikings, it doesn't sound like if they were doing that, it would have made this story, I feel like. But there is a sort of similar tool where Sam Darnold would have a helmet cam on during practice, and JJ McCarthy would use that footage and like to help him get a sense, right? So at least to make the mental reps as valuable as possible. So what does that mean about the expectation? How do we kind of parlay this into an updated and more specific expectation for JJ McCarthy? And it's the separation of the mental and the physical, right? I will be pretty disappointed if JJ McCarthy just doesn't get progressions, right? If he goes, oh, I didn't really realize that we were supposed to do that versus cover 3 or whatever. I expect some level of mistakes. I mean, 5-year pros make those kinds of mistakes sometimes, but I don't want that to be the story. I don't want the story to be that, oh, well, yeah, he just doesn't really get what's going on in the playbook, or he's, the timings aren't quite right with him, or I don't want him to be like making incorrect decisions pre-snap, especially where there's a little bit less time pressure on you. And you're looking at the fronts and you're looking at all the, like the book learning part of it. He's got to have that down pat. But the physical part of the game is going to be difficult. I have covered his mechanics in more detail than anyone. I feel pretty confident saying that. So we've got that whole thing going on. We're watching it, right? We'll see how it is. I don't expect it to be perfect. It doesn't look like it's perfect, and it might not ever be perfect. But rather the sort of speed of the game stuff. If it's, he didn't know that you're not supposed to throw blah, 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 throw versus cover 2. That's really bad. If he wanted to throw the right thing, but he was just a titch late because he's just a little bit slow on it because he's young, that's a lot more to be expected. That is where I think the majority of the problems are going to be. The actual speed processing is maybe going to be a work in progress, and that's okay. That is, I think, would be a perfectly reasonable place to be, considering how his first year went, where we're at, how old he is, and all of that. I think if he's behind any of those curves, I'm concerned. If he's ahead of those curves, I'm really, really excited. So there's a lot more to talk about. We got Jordan Addison, we got injury stuff, and all kinds of around the league news. That'll be next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. Hey, look, you're already following this stuff. You're watching Scotty Scheffler win a tournament he's not supposed to or something. I don't know. People seem mad. But whatever it is, I hope you put a bet on it, because you can go do that at FanDuel right now. Or you can do future bets. You can put, I think it's 35.50 over under JJ McCarthy passing yards. If you think he's going to do better than 35.50, which would be pretty low for even a bad quarterback in a Kevin O'Connell offense, we'll probably still get that just by volume. So if he stays healthy on a whole year, it's pretty hard to see him not reaching that. But don't take my word for it. Come up with your own opinion and put $5 on it. If you bet if you're new, go sign up at FanDuel, bet $5, and you can get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins, no matter what it is. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Today's episode is also brought to you by BetterHelp. Look, I mental health has been a thing for me for a while. It always has been. It's just part of how I live. I've been in therapy for a long time, and I highly recommend anybody get involved in it. And if you are the kind of person who is maybe a little bit intimidated by the process of finding a therapist, or you just don't think it's like right for you or whatever, check it out. Give BetterHelp a shot. The flexibility of online therapy is the whole point here. You can try a bunch of therapists, see if there's somebody that works. If you have a bad experience, kick them to the curb and try a new one. You can switch at no additional cost. Our listeners also get 10% off of their first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Moving right along here with the Locked On Vikings podcast. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. If you appreciate what I'm doing here, if you want a little bit more, you want to just support me directly, you can check out patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. I am planning to commit a lot more to the Patreon this year at the cost of some of the other ventures that I'm doing. I'm going to kind of focus a lot more in on it this year. So if you want a whole bunch of extra content, it's less than $4 a month, and that price is not going to change anytime soon. Even though you're going to start getting more stuff, because I just don't believe in that. So go check it out. Moving along though, there is another situation that requires some attention. You probably have already heard that Jordan Addison, his DUI matter in California has been resolved. He pled it down to what is colloquially referred to as a wet reckless, and now the NFL will begin their review of the matter to determine a suspension. So as of this recording, we do not know what the suspension is. I've got a pretty good guess, but let me break down the situation. So last summer, Jordan Addison gets cited on the side of the 105 freeway right in front of LAX, an area that I'm very familiar with, that is a very weird place to pull over. But he's pulled over and he's asleep in the car. He gets a DUI. Okay, there it is. This went a lot further along in the process than these sorts of athlete DUI situations tend to. Most of the time, these guys want to plea it down. They want to get rid of their they want to get rid of the story, right? They're going to come up to some agreement, try to quietly settle it away, and, take whatever the punishment is and, try to avoid jail time, right? Ultimately, that is where this resolved. But it's very rare to me that it goes all the way to the trial date. I could be wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if this happens all the time and I just miss it. But it doesn't, that feels a little weird, right? So they had a trial on Tuesday, jury trial. And then there was something and it ended up getting moved to Thursday. And from there, it gets pled down to what is known as a wet reckless. So in California, and I don't think only in California, there might be other states, but it's a wet reckless is not a crime officially in and of itself. It's a reckless driving charge. That's what it means. It's just the nickname for when you get a DUI and then plea it down to reckless driving, which is a much lesser charge. It's a misdemeanor. It very rarely comes with jail time, and if so, much less. And for Addison, he gets like a fine and some a fine and some probation. I'm sorry, fine and some probation. That's all he gets from the state of California. And then whatever the NFL is going to levy upon him, which it's very much up to them. The way the player conduct policy is worded, it's like any conduct that is unbecoming of the standards set by NFLPA. It could be anything, right? You could give somebody a suspension because you think their tie is offensive. If the arbitrator decides it is so, like the way the thing is worded, you can do that. But so there is no like agreed upon guideline for what that means. But I think it is an important thing to understand that it's important to be careful with our words. It is no longer true that Jordan Addison got a DUI. He does not have a DUI on his record. He has a reckless driving charge on his record. He actually has a couple of those in 2 different states. But neither of those are now officially DUIs. That's just an important thing. Like if we're writing articles, right? An important thing to make sure that we're really clear about wording wise. Spiritually, he still did a really dumb thing. And what the wet reckless plea bargain tells us is that alcohol was indeed involved. There were other theories, a couple that I actually thought were pretty good, about that it maybe wasn't necessarily alcohol in his system. It could have been under the influence of a number of different things. It could have been something, a little more innocuous or less innocuous or whatever. No, the wet reckless thing is, as far as I understand it, pertinent. They're like, prosecutors will only agree to it if it's alcohol and if there is something about the nature of the offense that's really minor, such as if your BAC was like really close to the limit, you were just over by a little bit. So yeah, it's a charge, but you're not blowing up, 0.2 and dying, right? Or the actual driving behavior wasn't so bad. Yeah, they pulled you over because you were speeding. They smelled it. They get you a breathalyzer. They got you, but you weren't doing anything particularly dangerous. They might agree to that. One I find really interesting is if prosecutors determine that there's some problem with the case itself that makes the trial risky, such as, and I mean, this is all strategy, right? Like this is not necessarily how justice is dispensed. This is a prosecutor making a choice about how they can get the best charge, right? They're making a risk reward decision, not a justice decision. But for example, if there was something about the stop that was messed up, like probable cause wasn't good enough, probably doesn't apply in this case as somebody was like sleep on the side of the road. That's pretty good probable cause. But, if there was something wrong with probable cause or something, they didn't get a breathalyzer test in time, which might be the case. We never saw an actual BAC in any of the police reports. So I wouldn't be surprised to learn that they didn't have a breathalyzer at all. And that would make it kind of difficult to actually get this charge to stick, to actually get a conviction. So the prosecutor says, okay, we'll agree. We'll call it a draw, wet reckless, right? Any number of things can happen there, but usually it's something about it is like not a slam dunk case, or it is, but it's like minor enough where you feel okay about letting it be a ticket, right? So the prosecutors agreed with this. And of course, Jordan Addison agreed to this. That's what it's going to be. So the reason I'm going through all that is because that's information that now the NFL has. But the NFL works on a very, very different thing than the legal standards of the United States of America or any given state in the United States of America. They don't have really a letter of the law here, like the state of California has a letter of the law. They are kind of vibes. There's an independent arbitrator. It's heavily influenced by Roger Goodell, even though he's no longer the arbitrator himself. It's still very influenced by like him personally. And the whole thing is a very subjective process. And here's where I put on my cynic hat. It's about how bad the NFL looks. It's not really about any idea of justice to me. I don't think the NFL, I don't think the NFL should be the arbiter of justice. I don't think anybody should look at the Shield as the most moral organization. I can point to about 10 different things going on right now, but, and we're actually going to talk about one of them, but rather the NFL is worried about its bottom line and its PR. So these are PR decisions. They always have been PR decisions. They were PR decisions when Adrian Peterson was on the commissioner's exempt list and when Ray Rice got essentially ostracized from the league. They were PR decisions when Colin Kaepernick got blackballed. They were always PR decisions, not justice decisions. So what is the PR of the Jordan Addison thing? Well, it's still like pretty much a freaking DUI. Like, I don't know. It's okay. You pled it down. Good job. The justice system did its weird thing where it becomes a negotiation and a chess match rather than an actual like investigation into the truth of a matter of who did what crime. But it's like he did the freaking thing. He did the thing. He did the thing, and now he pled to the thing in a technically less damaging way. So I'm gonna guess they're gonna give him the 3 games for that you give everybody with a DUI. That's my guess. But we'll see. We'll see. If it's less, if it's more, we'll talk about it when that happens. For now, there are other league-wide controversies that happened over the last week that I was not able to talk to you about. And I think, I shouldn't say all controversies. There's just other news and stuff that's going on that I think is worth mentioning. That'll be next on Locked On Vikings. Fellas, gentlemen, compatriots, you have probably heard of Viagra or Cialis, maybe even tried it. But if you are looking for something a little more beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. It's a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. So if you are somebody that has tried some traditional options, it hasn't worked for you for whatever reason, over 150,000 men have already made the switch, and it might be time to ask your doctor about this. You can even read real customer reviews on their site and see how it's helping people feel more confident, more present in the moment, and it's all completely online. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. All right, rapid fire, a little around the league news going on here on the Locked On Vikings podcast. Let's start with some injury news. So here's something that's going on. So the Vikings have started to show up for camp on Sunday night. JJ McCarthy and 39 other Vikings showed up to the facility. They are getting ready to go. They're going to continue to file in over the next couple of days. That's when we're going to find out about some injury stuff. We're going to find out some questions like, is Christian Darrisaw going to start the season on PUP? What's going on with Josh Metellus? Is he going to be continue to sit out? Is he quote unquote injured? What's going on? There's always going to be a couple of people that like got hurt over the offseason and we didn't know about it until now. This is when we find out. So over the next couple of days, we'll get some injury news, and the Packers and Lions are a few days ahead of us in that regard. So we've already gotten that injury news, and I think it's worth mentioning. So for the Lions, they've actually already had a bunch of injury things, which has got to just be devastating for them and for Lions fans who just dealt with this crazy injury bug, and it seems like it's kind of back. There are some holdovers. Alan McNeil is a holdover from last year. Taylor Decker is also hurt. Their left tackle. That's a new injury. That's a big one to watch. Levi Onwuzurike as well. And then on the Green Bay Packers side, they've had a couple of interesting situations. So Christian Watson, I think he's on the PUP, but he's on the kind of PUP that like you can come off tomorrow if you're ready. This is not the season-ending thing, but this is a holdover from his ACL injury that he suffered against the Vikings last year. There's Elton Jenkins, who so I hope Peter's okay if I say this, because I texted Peter Bukowski about it. I was like, what's the deal? And he called it a case of I want a new contractitis. So, I don't know, questionable with that. And he's on NFI. And Quay Walker is also on the PUP, but that seems, it sounds like it's a little more minor, but I don't know for sure. But those are some pretty big names. I mean, those are starters on both of those teams that would be pretty big to lose. I think the biggest one is Taylor Decker, with the Lions already kind of gymnasticsing a little bit on their line by throwing their second round permanent guard, like Tate Ratledge was always a guard, and having him play center in place of Frank Ragnow is already like a situation that I don't think that they wanted. I don't think that that's like what the plan was there. I like that can't have been plan A, right? Like that feels unideal to them. And now if they have to replace the left tackle as well, that could be definitely a situation to monitor. And then for the Packers, Christian Watson, if his ACL causes him to miss time, I could see him, like he already fell down the depth chart a little bit. And so I could see it leading to a pretty swift divorce with the Packers. They've got Matthew Golden now. They're much happier with like Jaden Reed and Romeo Dobbs for now. And I could honestly see, I think I said this hot take on a thing, that in 2026, the Packers wide receiver room does not have a single person who was on it in 2024. I could very much see that being the case and them completely having to rebuild that room because it was pretty bad last year. It was a problem for them. And so immediately a depth guy, I guess we'll call him, still not being ready to go is going to be rough, but it also gives an opportunity for a younger guy to step up, as it always is. And sometimes you get, KJ Osborne's that show up for that. Elsewhere, a quick update on if you were listening last week or 2 weeks ago with the episode I did with Arif. He did a big write-up on this whole thing with the NFLPA and JC Tretter and Lloyd Howell. You've probably seen something about it. There's a bunch of really funny headlines coming out about Lloyd Howell. You just Google Lloyd Howell, see what comes up, explore a little bit. We've learned some things, but Lloyd Howell was the executive director of the NFLPA. His hiring was under, I'll call it, interesting circumstances, a little shady circumstances about it. Arif broke that down for us on a show last Thursday, so you can check that out. But there is an update with JC Tretter. So the idea was that Lloyd Howell and JC Tretter were kind of two like head honchos of the NFLPA, and that they were running the show a lot, and that they maybe didn't get in their jobs by the most above board means. Neither of them have their jobs anymore. JC Tretter has stepped down now. Lloyd Howell has stepped down now. I know when we talked about it, there were a lot there. Oh, and as there always are, and that's okay. There's a lot of mixed opinions about what a union should or shouldn't be doing, or how much power a union should or shouldn't have. But I think we can all agree that like there is an NFLPA, right? Like we can agree on that reality. By virtue of there being an NFLPA, that it is probably best if the NFLPA is like a functional thing, right? If you don't think it should be functional, you should just say it should be like banned or whatever, and then that's your take. But it wasn't, it seems like. And there's a lot of the stuff that Pablo Torre himself, like personally, has unearthed. This is incredible journalism from Pablo Torre. And the fact that like people are just sort of quitting the job instead of, there's a lot of like, look, this is a smear job and none of it's true, but I will be resigning. Like, I don't know, man, it's not looking great over there. But hopefully this can sort of shine a light where a light needs to be shined and get the NFLPA to a more organized place where it is providing the function it was designed to provide, that's going to be better for everyone in the long term. But as it relates, I mean, it doesn't relate to the Vikings any more than it relates to any other team, but it's definitely something you should be paying attention to. The structure of the union, look, it is 2025. We have 5 years left on the CBA. So we're as far away from CBA negotiations as like physically possible. But 5 years is going to go by like snap of the fingers, and then we're going to be negotiating again. And when we are negotiating again, you're going to want all parties to be competent and things to be above board. It's not good for anyone if that negotiation isn't done in good faith. It's not good short term and it's not good long term. So hopefully this helps that to happen. But for now, we'll move on. There's some other stuff I didn't even get to today. Locked On has its top 100 players. We have our own top 100 players. Some Vikings snubs that I'm not feeling great about, so I'll probably get to that later in the week, plus some cool personal announcements about like how, like the stuff that I have coming down the pipe for you this year, some really cool stuff that I'm excited about. So we've got a lot to get to. And then camp starts next week. We're almost here, folks. We made it. I will see you all tomorrow. It's Town Hall Tuesday tomorrow, so get your questions in. I'm sure there are some already because we didn't have one last week, but ask me your questions previewing the Vikings or whatever else. Google Doc is in the show notes for you to submit those. If you have hot takes too, now would be the time. This would also be maybe a great time for some season-long bold predictions. We actually maybe did that. No, we didn't do that yet. We got to do that. Let's do some season-long bold predictions. Maybe that'll be later in the week as well. I will see you all tomorrow, and as always, Skull.